Israel's parliament has just passed a law banning the United Nations Palestinian Aid Agency from operating. Our Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran is live outside the Knesset in Jerusalem this morning. Matthew, explain what's happening.
Bridget, good morning. There are two bills which are sort of operating in parallel here, which have been put forward by private members of the Knesset, looking at outlawing the operations of UNRWA in Israel and also in the Palestinian territories, the West Bank and Gaza. This has been part of a very long campaign, a public relations campaign, I guess you could say, by members of Israel's parliament and indeed Israel's government, targeting UNRWA throughout the course of the war in Gaza, accusing it of having deep ties to Hamas in Gaza and indeed having accused at various points throughout the conflict UNRWA workers of working alongside Hamas during that conflict, aiding them. We know that some UNRWA workers have been stood down as a result of some of those investigations. Others indeed have been cleared. But this legislation, the first of those two bills, has just passed the Knesset in the last couple of moments or so. The first meeting of the Knesset for a number of weeks, the winter session kicking off earlier today. And from what we can see, it was a pretty significant vote, a pretty overwhelming vote in favour of this bill. Some of the figures that we're seeing, 92 votes in favour, 10 votes against. So this is a very significant moment, because effectively what this means is that UNRWA will not be able to operate under Israeli law in this part of the world. So getting any aid into places like the West Bank and Gaza will be near on impossible, because to do so, UNRWA would have to be working with the Israeli Defence Forces and Israeli government officials to get access to those parts of the world. And this legislation actually makes it illegal for Israeli officials to deal with UNRWA. So this could have very, very grave consequences for the Palestinian population in both Gaza and the West Bank. The full ramifications will become clear once we get a sense of the final wording of that bill. And indeed, in some discussions I've had today with UNRWA officials here in Jerusalem, they were very keen to pore over the details of that bill before getting a sense of exactly how their operations would be affected. Something that also shows, I guess, how this public relations campaign, or this public diminishing or destroying of UNRWA's reputation, has been playing out here in Israel. The Jerusalem Municipal Council, the City Council here in Jerusalem, has been threatening to seize UNRWA's offices in East Jerusalem and turn it into housing. That just shows how much this has deteriorated over the course of this war, although it has to be said UNRWA wasn't exactly in the Israeli government's on good books, I guess you could say, for many years ahead of that war in Gaza kicking off over a year ago.
And Matt, what have we learnt about the progress of ceasefire talks? Where's that all at?
Yeah, these are very, very early discussions, Bridget, looking at trying to bring some sort of ceasefire and hostage deal to pass to end that war in Gaza. These negotiations are happening in the Qatari capital of Doha, and they have kick-started again in the last day or so. But we are at the very early stages of that. We're hearing reports through Saudi Arabian media who are citing Hamas officials saying that Hamas would be open to an interim proposal which has been put forward by the Egyptian president for sort of a staged approach here. So that proposal would involve a 2-day ceasefire, the returning of 4 Israeli hostages by Hamas, and in exchange for that, Israel would release some Palestinian prisoners. That, of course, is nowhere near what is needed to be done to end the war in Gaza, but it is being cited as one step down that path, perhaps a goodwill gesture. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has said that his negotiators are working towards a deal, but it must be said that we've seen this story a number of times before. The early stages of negotiations seeming sort of promising, only for them to falter. And of course, as I mentioned, this war now stretching into its second year, many of those talks have simply broken down. Bridget?
Matthew Doran, thanks very much.